Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a massive show ahead for you all today. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about the likelihood of US boots on the ground in Iran. That's a big question that many are concerned about, and they're concerned about it for good reason, because it does appear that it is a huge consideration for the Trump administration. So stick around for that story. We're also going to talk about Israel opening up yet another front in this war and escalating conflict with Lebanon. And when I say Lebanon, I'm not just talking about Hezbollah. Israel is now bombing areas of Lebanon where Hezbollah does not have really any presence or any control, which just kind of goes along with the narrative that I've been trying to get people to understand. This isn't about going after Israel's enemies. This is about Israel's expansionist project. And history, world sites, UNESCO heritage sites are being completely and utterly destroyed in the process of this. So we'll get to some of that later in the show. And as we speak, there's a big debate going on in regard to whether or not Kurds have entered the war against Iran. Conflicting reporting on that, but one thing that we do know for sure is that the CIA and the Trump administration has been considering arming the Kurds to join this fight, to essentially spark civil war in Iran, ensure that the country falls prey to chaos. So, we can look forward to a destabilized, failed state. Who does that benefit? Well, we know, only one country. So we'll get to that as well. As always, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream. In fact, I don't ask you guys to do much, okay? I hate directing people to do things. It's not my favorite thing to do. However, I did watch half of Piers Morgan Uncensored today, which featured that really creepy looking guy, Josh Hammer. But that's not the reason why I bring it up. I bring it up because Cenk Uygur was on. And Piers Morgan has these weird days where he's playing dumb or he literally lost a few brain cells. Maybe he was drinking the night before. He's having a difficult time understanding what Cenk meant by a tweet where he specifically said that, at least the Ayatollah, he died with some level of dignity and bravery. He didn't hide. He knew it was very likely he was going to be assassinated either by the United States or the Israelis. And that is in fact what happened. He didn't hide. In fact, the Iranian leadership, including the Ayatollah, all got hit in a single strike because they were struck during a meeting. And so Cenk made a point about how that was way more courageous than what we see other world leaders, including our leader, do, which is, fall to their knees and pleasure Israel. And for some reason, Piers Morgan is super offended by that. I'm more offended by the fact that we don't have a government that represents us. I think that, Piers Morgan should be a little bit concerned that the UK follows the US's lead as we go ahead and engage in wars that we shouldn't be fighting on behalf of a foreign country. So what's my big ask? During the break or when you get time, leave a little comment of support for Cenk, okay? Because it's just ridiculous that he's being hounded by Piers Morgan on something that's pretty easy to understand. Anyway, with that in mind, let's move on to our first story. Let's talk about the Israelis spying on the US president and how commonplace this has become. It's insane.
If we didn't hit within 2 weeks, they would have had a nuclear weapon. If we didn't do the B-2 attack a number of months ago, they would have a nuclear weapon. And when crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen. I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible.
Okay, not only is none of that true, but President Donald Trump said in the very last part of that video that if we didn't do this, they were going to hit Israel. That sounds like Israel's problem. But the real question here is, why is it that regardless of which president we're talking about, in this case, of course, it's President Donald Trump, they insist on being humiliated in front of the American people on the world stage on behalf of Israel? Why do they like to get dog walked by a foreign leader? And I think we might have our answer. We've talked about bribery. We've talked about blackmail, which I do think that Trump might be a victim of, especially when it came to the Epstein files cover up. But there's something else at play here. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's very obvious the Israelis have been spying on the United States and the Trump administration in particular. We stand to gain nothing by getting involved in this war against Iran, which has unfortunately escalated to a regional war. There's complete chaos in the Middle East as we speak. We've lost billions of dollars already. We've lost at least 6 soldiers, if not more. And Iran is not a threat to the United States. Their ballistic missiles couldn't even reach the US. So why did we get involved in this? And it does look like Israel has Trump by the balls. Let's just keep it real. And it's clear they've been spying on him because it's being reported as such. So let's start off with Shalom Lipner, who worked for the Israeli government and for various pro-war think tanks here in the United States. He writes, Israeli intel obtained information earlier this week that raised suspicions that communication had taken place between Iran and the administration to discuss a ceasefire. Oh, wow, how scandalous. Possible ceasefire? How could that happen? Netanyahu called White House officials on Monday and asked if talks or exchange of messages happened. How dare you engage in potential diplomatic talks to end the bloodshed in the Middle East, Trump? Have you been having conversations with the Iranians behind my back? Now, where did this reporting originate from? Well, someone who worked for Israeli intel until like yesterday, and that was Barak Ravid, who reported this for Axios, saying that Netanyahu sought clarifications from the White House earlier this week after intelligence suggested Trump administration officials might be communicating with Iran. How did the Israelis get this intel about communications between the United States and Iran? I wonder. So you look into the piece or the compilation of bullet points that the former Israeli intel agent wrote for Axios. And he says that Netanyahu's outreach suggests that the Israeli government is concerned about a scenario in which the US pursues a ceasefire before all of Israel's war objectives have been achieved. Is there anyone seriously suggesting that this war isn't all about Israel and what they want? It's just so abundantly clear. You have Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, just saying it to us plainly. Of course, he probably was pulled aside after he admitted that the US got dragged into this war on behalf of Israel and was told by his masters that he better walk it back. And he tried to and looked like a clown while he was doing it. But nonetheless, this is all about Israel. That's it. This does not benefit the United States in any way, shape, or form. On Monday, Barak Ravid writes, Netanyahu called White House officials and asked if such talks or exchange of messages happened. The White House told Bibi that the Trump administration wasn't talking to the Iranians behind his back. Don't worry, Bibi, I'm not talking to him. I swear I'm not talking to anybody you don't want me to talk to. I'm not cheating on you. Embarrassing. This is supposed to be the most powerful country in the world. What a joke. A US official said Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, talk almost every day to their daddy, Benjamin Netanyahu, to the director of Mossad, David Barnea, another terrorist, and other Israeli officials. And that regardless of ups and downs in the past, the coordination over the last month was very close. Don't worry, baby. I'm devoted to you, not to the American people, not what's in the best interest of my own country, but for a tiny, irrelevant country in the Middle East that is belligerent, that is a pariah state, that has leached off the American people for many, many decades now, and has dragged us into wars that has cost US taxpayers literally trillions of dollars. That's supposed to be an ally? It actually sounds like we have an enemy of the state grabbing our presidents by the balls and humiliating the American people in the process of doing so. That's the reality of the situation. But anyway, why don't we move on to our next story? Because there's a lot to get to. The escalation that we're seeing in the Middle East is absolutely devastating. And the real question here is, was there a good faith effort to engage in peace negotiations? Was there a good faith effort to negotiate with the Iranians prior to the devastating strikes that the United States carried out on behalf of Israel, which has now led to complete and utter chaos in the Middle East? That's the question. Let's get to the details.
They've been enriching well beyond the number that you need for civil nuclear. It's up to 60%. They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb making material, and that's really dangerous.
I think we can all agree that that was an incredibly strange statement to make as the Middle East envoy who's supposed to be engaging in negotiations with the Iranians. Now, that was, of course, Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. Prior to the US sparking a devastating war against Iran, which has now escalated to a regional war in the Middle East. Why did he say that? Why did he lie? Which, of course, would undermine negotiations with the Iranians. Could it be that maybe Steve Witkoff wasn't acting in good faith to begin with? Now, we're learning that Witkoff might have been undermining these peace talks entirely. Now, the real question is why, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, here's what we've learned thanks to an exclusive by MS Now. They apparently spoke to a Persian Gulf diplomat who threw cold water on some of the narratives coming from Steve Witkoff following these meetings and these talks. Ahead of the war, Witkoff lied and told Fox News. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, meaning 60% enriched uranium. Okay, that's what he said in a Fox interview, referring to the uranium's level of enrichment. And they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, very specific, 11 nuclear bombs. And that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So he's claiming, look, the Iranians show up, they tell us that they're like minutes away from causing complete chaos in the world. They're about to make 11 nuclear bombs. He even went on to say this during that Fox interview, quote, they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs. Now, just real quick, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's important for you to know. As vicious as you may have found the Ayatollah to have been, Ayatollah Khamenei, the fact of the matter is he was really the only figure in Iran that was holding Iran back from racing toward building a nuclear weapon. He had put out a fatwa against nuclear weapons. It's against, the Shiite interpretation of the Muslim religion. So he was very much against building nuclear weapons. Well, they assassinated that guy. And now there's no brakes on that car. So if you're looking at Iran's targeting of civilian infrastructure, and let's be clear, they are targeting civilian infrastructure. Number one, no one in the West really has a leg to stand on if they're going to clutch their pearls about that. I have been speaking out pretty vociferously against targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I do have a moral leg to stand on. And when Iran does that, it's wrong. But it doesn't matter what I think or what I have to say, because fact of the matter is the one person who was serving as the brakes to that car, Khamenei, was assassinated. So now you have some hardline figures, seeing this, I believe accurately, as an existential threat to Iran. And they're going for it. And I think that's pretty clear based on, the bombings we've seen in Tel Aviv, which Israel doesn't want us to know about. But there have been some videos that have been leaked, and it's been absolutely devastating for Tel Aviv. Don't let anyone lie to you and make you think otherwise. It's hard to believe that the Israeli population is happy with what's going on right now. But nonetheless, let me continue. Let's get back to Witkoff. According to an exclusive report by MS Now, two sources told them that some of the people involved in the talks did not view Witkoff as an honest broker. It turns out he is lying. Now, we suspected he was lying because the claim that Iran is like days away from having 11 nuclear bombs is laughable, to say the least, especially when you simultaneously have the president of the United States talking about how we obliterated their nuclear sites last summer. Like, what are we doing here? Nonetheless, Persian Gulf diplomats with direct knowledge of the talks told MS Now that Witkoff is just utterly lying. He's a liar. I can categorically state that this is inaccurate, said the diplomat, referring to Witkoff's account. He was explaining that all of this material can all go away should we have a deal and Iran can be relieved from sanctions. In other words, Iran actually went they went further than they had in the JCPOA, which was signed under the Obama administration. That was the nuclear deal. Now, in that nuclear deal, Iran was able to enrich some uranium. The Trump administration, at the behest of the Israelis, said, no, you can't enrich any uranium. Now, the real question is, was Iran willing to accept those conditions? Stick around for that. The same Persian Gulf diplomat said that Witkoff also presented a bogus misrepresentation of himself as a man of peace, which I'm definitely believing these days. But he says Mr. Witkoff conducted himself in a manner not befitting the office he represented. Actually, when you look at the office he's representing, I think he does represent it pretty well. It's a administration full of thugs, grifters, individuals who seem to loathe this country and only see the government as an opportunity to enrich themselves. The American people are totally getting shafted under the Trump administration, and our soldiers are getting dragged into a war they should not be involved in, which could escalate to something far worse, and it appears we are going in that direction. Now, a spokesman from the White House denies that Witkoff was misrepresenting anything that took place or transpired during those talks, but I actually would like to turn to an interview that took place days prior to the US striking Iran. Because who you're about to hear from is the Omani foreign minister. He's the individual who was mediating the negotiations between the United States and Iran. And here is what he said the Iranians were willing to agree to. Again, going much farther than they were willing to go under the JCPOA. Take a look.
I believe is the agreement that Iran will never ever have a nuclear material that will create a bomb.
So you're saying all enriched material would be shipped someplace else, not Russia, but
No, the current stockpiles that still exist.
the things that are still in Iran.
I think that there is agreement now that this will be downblended to the lowest level possible.
Okay.
To a neutral level, a natural level, which means and converted into fuel, and that fuel will be irreversible.
That would be significant if Iran agreed to that.
It is very significant, and I think we have agreement on that.
But as the incredibly knowledgeable and intelligent audience of mine knows, this wasn't ever about weapons. It wasn't about enriched uranium. It was always about what Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis have wanted for literally decades: regime change in Iran. They want a weak Iran so they don't have to face any challenges as the regional hegemon, of course. And as they expand their borders and engage in their ongoing, colonial project, they don't have to worry about any pushback. Iran is decapitated, essentially, weakened, destabilized, turned into a failed state. That has been the goal all along. That is the reason why Trump entered this war without a real plan about what happens should the IRCG fall. Because chaos is the point. A failed state is the point. So I'm glad that the Omani foreign minister gave that interview just days before the US struck, because we had some clarity on the fact that Iran was engaging in good faith, but the US certainly was not. Now, contrast what you heard from the Omani foreign minister with what the White House spokeswoman said in response to MS Now's reporting on this. Her name is Anna Kelly. She says, unfortunately, Iran refused to participate in serious negotiations with the United States. Complete and utter lie, obviously. So the president took courageous action to destroy their ability to have a nuclear weapon, launch or produce ballistic missiles, or arm terrorist proxies. Okay, well, if that's what the war is about, and that's what Trump managed to succeed in doing, then why are we still involved? In fact, why are there conversations about potential US troops on the ground in Iran? Because this was never about weapons. This was never about fearing that the Iranians had the capability to strike the United States. Now, they did pose a threat to Israel. That wouldn't be the case if Israel didn't want to engage in an expansionist project, but they do want to engage in an expansionist project. Therefore, Iran needed to be dealt with. And they're basically dragging the United States to do their dirty work for them. And by the way, in the meantime, they're escalating war with Lebanon, because that's one of the countries they want to annex land from, of course. So it is clear that Iranians genuinely did want to make a deal. The Persian Gulf diplomat added that the foreign minister of Iran, Araghchi, said that he was prepared to stay in Oman and continue talking with Witkoff and Kushner for as long as it took. Quote, even if it's 1 to 2 weeks. But Witkoff and Kushner said they needed to leave the following day to visit the US aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. The truth is, again, never about weapons. And I want to go to one other graphic here before we talk a little bit about why Witkoff would engage in bad faith, especially as someone who really wanted to tout himself as a peacemaker. Well, there is someone that Jared Kushner and Witkoff, the two individuals who were supposed to be negotiating with Iran, have been communicating with every day. And this was reported by Barak Ravid over at Axios today. So a US official said Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner talk almost every day to Netanyahu, which, we're talking about a person who does not want peace. He wants war. To the director of Mossad, David Barnea, and to other Israeli officials, and that regardless of ups and downs in the past, the coordination over the last month was very close. You mean over the last month when Witkoff was supposed to be engaging in good faith negotiations with Iran? Good to know, good to know. So there was never a good faith effort to negotiate with Iran. We need to be clear about that. And there's something else you should know about, because prior to the war getting started, we heard that Saudi Arabia did not want to get involved. They didn't want to get dragged into this. So Saudi Arabia said, United States, we are not going to allow you to use your military bases in our country to strike Iran. We just don't want to get dragged into it, okay? Well, the Saudi crown prince is also a terrorist, also a liar, a butcher, if you will. And so the Washington Post had reported on February 28th that push from Saudis, Israel helped move Trump to attack Iran. US intelligence assessments saw no imminent threat, but regional allies argued now was the time to strike. And strike we did. And I don't think Trump is going to be happy with the decision he made. If not now, pretty soon he's going to realize what a huge disaster this was, a massive risk that will define his legacy. It turns out that Israel and Saudi Arabia had been engaging in a weeks-long campaign to urge the United States to strike Iran. So Saudi Arabia is very much part of this. According to 4 people familiar with the matter who spoke to the Washington Post, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made multiple private phone calls to Trump over the past month, advocating a US attack despite his public support for a diplomatic solution. The attack came despite US intelligence assessments that Iran's forces were likely to pose an imminent threat to the US mainland within the next decade. So not within a few weeks, not within a few days, 10 years. We're talking about 10 freaking years. Okay. Last November, Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren and Chris Murphy actually called out the Witkoffs, meaning Steve Witkoff and his son, over their conflicts of interest in the Persian Gulf as he continued engaging in negotiations and peace talks. So Witkoff partnered with Trump's family back in 2024 to launch World Liberty Financial, a cryptocurrency company. A lot of dark money, a lot of hidden bribery can take place with crypto, can it? A few months later, Witkoff became Trump's special envoy to the Middle East and for peace missions. And since Trump's reelection, Zach Witkoff, that's Steve Witkoff's son, has used cryptocurrency conferences in Dubai and Abu Dhabi as venues to raise billions of dollars from government-linked investors in the UAE and elsewhere, possibly Saudi Arabia, for World Liberty Financial, the Trump Witkoff cryptocurrency company. These people are leeches. They are the worst among us. They have sold the country out just so they can make a buck. They are just the absolute most disgusting and evil human beings imaginable. And I know I'm using strong language. It's very, very harsh. But they are happy. I want to be clear, happy to sacrifice the lives of American soldiers so they can get dog walked by basically by those who pay them to humiliate themselves on the world stage for a little bit of profit. Steve Witkoff is a joke. Jared Kushner, in my opinion, is the new Epstein. Certainly when it comes to the background wheeling and dealing that takes place, the shadow government that actually rules us all, that's what's happening. We don't live under a democracy. We don't live under a democratic republic, none of that, okay? There is a shadow government. They're the ones who pull the strings. You're seeing it happen in real time. And look, the one thing I'll give the Trump administration some credit for, they're so unsophisticated that they can't help but just be brazen about what they're doing. So we all know what's going on now. In previous administrations, there was speculation, but now it's abundantly clear. The office of the presidency has been bastardized into an office that serves individuals who seek to enrich themselves, even if it means embarrassing themselves and selling out the American people. We'll be back. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. I just want to let you know that if you think that I've been unchained when it comes to my critique of Israel, you are mistaken. I know my job is safe at TYT, but calling General Conricus a terrorist on Piers Morgan's show got me fired from one of my favorite sidekicks. And it's okay because now I'm fully free. So to the board member who insisted on getting me fired, you haven't seen the last of me. Anyway, I'm gonna read some comments, and thank you to our members for giving us a voice, helping us to do what we do with no fear. Because without you guys, we would have to work for other companies. We'd have to rely on sponsors and people who seek to censor other members of the media. And luckily, we're accountable to you, and that's all that matters to us. All right, let's get to some of our comments, beginning with our TYT.com members. Tio writes in and says, "We did what the Ayatollah wanted us to do." You know, you actually make a compelling case there because this is destroying our country, but our leaders couldn't care less about that. If you're an American citizen and you love this country, and when I say I love this country, I think of the people, I think of our land, I think of the nature, I think of the landscapes. Like, this country is so amazing, it's so amazing, but we don't have the leadership that we deserve. And we haven't had the leadership we deserve in a really, really long time. Okay, let's go to Disruptor Puss, who says, if we're lucky, maybe Mars will attack. Meteor, maybe? I don't know. Asimov's prophet says, Cenk, you know you're doing the right thing when you stand up to bullies and they get offended. That's true. And when you're in the middle of it, doesn't feel like the incentives are in the right place. But I'm just hoping that in the long run, the people who get rewarded are those who have a conscience and want to do the right thing and want to tell the truth. Art Guy says, watching the news with Anna's pink bird art in the background feels like coming home. Art Guy, thank you so much. And if you love the background, then I did good because you're an artist after all. Ian writes in and says, he's parroting Bibi. Everyone you want to go to war with is a week away from nukes. Totally. It's like Iraq 101. I'm having, these flashbacks of what we were going through in 2002 and 2003 prior to the preemptive strike in March of 2003. All right, let's go to Targrim Unlimited, who's subscribed as tier 1 and has been subscribed over at Twitch for 71 months. Thank you for all you do, Anna and TYT team. Never stop fighting and speaking unfiltered truth. I promise you, I will never stop speaking my mind. I mean, I honestly can't help myself. So thank you for giving me a voice. I really, really appreciate you all. Let's get back to the show. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like this kind of new phone company that seeks to save you money. It's called Noble Mobile. But if you haven't heard of it, I'm about to tell you about it. So Mobile Noble will literally pay you for any of the data that you have not used. And they're pretty fantastic. They have a promotion right now where your first month will cost you a measly $10. And if you want to learn more about it, all you need to do is go to that URL that you see on your screen, tyt.com/switch. That's tyt.com/switch. It'll help save you money on your cell phone bill. And it's just a better deal when it comes to data, because who doesn't want to get cash back for data they haven't used? All right. Well, without further ado, I want to talk about something that's been heavy on my heart and on my mind, and that has to do with the possibility of sending American troops to fight on the ground in Iran. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, which they didn't have to begin with. This is really about a regime change war, and it's not something you can do unless you have boots on the ground. So let's get to it.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground.
B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. You can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo.
This is as serious as it gets. This is war and peace. They told us in that room that there are going to be more Americans that are going to die.
Doesn't it feel good to know that someone who's potentially still an alcoholic is setting the pace and the tempo for a quickly escalating war in the Middle East? And yes, I am talking about Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And the real question that many in America are wondering at this moment is whether or not the Trump administration intends to send ground troops to spur regime change in Iran. That would be devastating, but it seems like it's something that Trump is certainly open to. At the same time, today's Pentagon presser featuring Secretary of War Pete Hegseth made clear that the White House really has no idea what they're doing as this war against Iran has escalated into a devastating regional war. So let's get to some of these details, because yesterday, the Senate took part in a classified briefing on the war. And it apparently shook Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal quite a bit. Here's what he had to say.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground and that troops from the United States may be necessary to accomplish objectives that the administration seems to have. But I also am no more clear on what the priorities are going to be of the administration going forward, whether it is destroying the nuclear capacity of Iran or simply the missiles or regime change or stopping terrorist activities.
So Senator Blumenthal left that classified briefing on the war against Iran even more confused about what the administration's objectives are. So I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, I understand why Blumenthal would be confused because we're dealing with an administration that has absolutely no idea what they're doing and they're being led by a foreign country, Israel. On the other hand, though, I don't think Blumenthal is that stupid. And what I mean by that is it is clear to anyone who's been paying attention that this has been about regime change in Iran from the very beginning. Netanyahu has been urging the United States to fight this dirty war on his behalf, on Israel's behalf, for literally decades. You can find videos of him dating back to the late 80s, where he's fear-mongering about Iran and their nuclear capability, which didn't even exist, never existed. And why did he do that? Because he wanted to go the United States to engage for regime change, not for the weapons, not because Israel's genuine. Israel is a nuclear power. They have a clandestine nuclear program. They stole our nuclear secrets thanks to Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell. The Dimona nuclear site is the clandestine nuclear site belonging to Israel. Israel is not worried about being wiped off the face of the earth. They are a nuclear power. Okay, nuclear weapons serve as a deterrent. And so when Iran enriched uranium to 60%, remember you need enriched uranium at 90% in order to be able to build a nuclear bomb. But they had enriched up to 60%. Why did they do that? Because they were trying to have a latent deterrent, because they knew of the threat that Israel and the United States posed to their own sovereignty. And they were right about that. So anyway, Blumenthal knows, so him pretending like he's confused about the objectives, I'm not really buying it, but I can understand if Blumenthal is concerned if the Trump administration doesn't have a sound plan in place to, protect our troops, protect our military assets in the region, protect our embassies, which the Trump administration didn't do. And our embassies got targeted in various countries, including Bahrain, including in Qatar, Saudi Arabia. We had a CIA center in Saudi Arabia that the Iranians bombed. So do I think the Trump administration really knows what they're doing? No, I don't. But do I know what their objective here is? Yeah, their objective is get on your knees. Netanyahu's gonna take his pants down and you're gonna pleasure him. You are at the pleasure of a foreign country's leader, duh. Okay, now later during an interview with News Nation, House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, another Republican, said that boots on the ground in Iran might be unavoidable.
If there are boots on the ground, I hope they're not on the ground any longer than the boots on the ground were in Venezuela. But I think that that's something the president knows that members of Congress certainly hope doesn't happen, but sometimes that's unavoidable in a situation like this.
Nonsense, it's not unavoidable. You could have just, avoided striking Iran and escalating the situation to a regional war. But that would require you to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israelis, which for whatever reason, this administration is unwilling to do. But to be fair, Biden was unwilling to do that. Biden's not even in the Epstein files as far as we can see. So it looks like he just did it for the love of the game. So Biden's just a bad guy. He wasn't even being bribed, he was definitely being bribed. He took a lot of money from the Israel lobby, but I don't think that was the motivating factor for Biden. With Trump, the way he has behaved when it comes to the release of the Epstein files, very suspicious. It seems like there's something more at play when it comes to the Trump administration. But going back to Blumenthal's statements, he is correct in being confused about the Trump administration's plans here, right? Like how are they planning on carrying this out? What are they doing to protect Americans? Well, Senator Brian Schatz, a Democrat, shares the same concern that Blumenthal has, but he's a little harsher in his wording. Let's take a quick look at that.
There are times when you go into a classified session and you walk out and you have a better understanding about the gravity of the situation and the rationale behind the military action, this is not one of those times. We remain as confused as the American people are. They have had 3 or 4 or 5 justifications for this act of war over the last 4 or 5 days, and nothing in this classified session alleviated that confusion.
Look, the truth is you get different messaging depending on which administration official is speaking at any given moment. And I want to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here because, okay, let's move away from the administration. Let's actually take a look at the Republican Party. Let's look at congressional lawmakers. They can't even admit that we are in a war right now. And if you don't believe me, here's a little taste of what I'm talking about.
You'll concede this is war. You'll concede this is war.
We haven't declared war. They declared war on us, but we haven't.
War. Secretary Hegseth.
We haven't declared.
Just now, you said this is war.
They've called it war.
They've called it war. What I was saying. Okay, well that was a misspoke. What I was saying that they've declared war on us, but war is ugly.
I don't believe in the semantics. We've talked about the language this morning. We're not at war right now. We're 4 days in to a very specific, clear mission, an Operation Epic Fury.
I had the displeasure of doing her take this morning with one of the dumbest women I've ever met in my life. Her name is Bianca. And she made the same statement that you just heard Mike Johnson make, that no, we're just doing targeted strikes. Are we? Are we just doing targeted strikes? Bianca, you moron. I would prefer to listen to what the president has to say about how to classify our military actions in the Middle East right now. Take a look.
Well, thank you very much. These are exciting times. I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front.
Oh, we're doing very well on the war front. Oh, interesting. They have no idea what they're doing. No idea what they're doing. Complete and utter disaster. And I suspect the reason why there's this contradiction in the messaging of whether or not this is a war is the American people don't like what's going on. They don't want to get dragged into a war in the Middle East on behalf of a foreign country. Only 25% of Americans were somewhat kind of open-minded to military action against Iran. And that was before the military action began and 6 of our soldiers got slaughtered. So who knows what they're thinking right now? But Senator Josh Hawley left that classified briefing and said this. He believed the officials did not communicate a possible end date. Quote, it sounded very open-ended to me. Listen, I know that I've got a great skincare routine and I look way younger than I am. Not to compliment myself too much, but I was around and very aware of what was going on in the preemptive war against Iraq. This is completely mirroring everything that we experienced in the lead up to that war. The lies, the deception, the embarrassment to the American people, and more importantly, the deception about how easy and quick it would be to invade Iraq and destroy their weapons of mass destruction. That war wasn't quick, it wasn't easy, and it was absolutely devastating to our budget here in the US. It was devastating, more importantly, to our soldiers. The soldiers who lost their lives, the soldiers who had multiple deployments and will have lifelong mental health issues as a result of the trauma they had to deal with in Iraq. These people in the administration, in our government, are scum. They don't represent us. They don't care about us. And we as Americans, regardless of where you land on the political spectrum, I don't even care at this point. It's not even about partisanship at this point. This is about whether or not you want to protect this country or if you want to be a puppet for a foreign country and get our people killed in the process. That's where I'm at with this. So this is where we're at. And I'm terrified that they send ground troops to Iran without any real plan in place knowing full well, by the way, that we are running out of interceptors. So imagine putting human bodies, American bodies on the line, knowing that we're running out of interceptors. So look, CNN reports that the Trump administration officials told lawmakers during a closed door briefing the following: Iran's Shahed attack drones represent a major challenge, and US air defenses will not be able to intercept them all. And that's according to a source in the briefing. This is something that I've been reading about in various like military outlets as well. Because if you want to get a better sense of like the truth and what the military is actually concerned about, they're concerned about this. They're not able to intercept some of these drones. And on top of that, we are running low on interceptors, period, okay? So in regard to the drones, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, acknowledged are posing a bigger problem than anticipated. They are known to fly low and slow, a feature that makes them more able to evade air defenses than ballistic missiles. So introducing more American troops in that region and potentially on the ground in Iran would be devastating, would put their lives at risk, would certainly lead to far more US casualties. And for what? If you're a Republican and you were hoodwinked by this administration during the Trump campaign when he said that he was gonna be the peace president, that he wasn't gonna drag us into forever wars, look, he lied to you. And I'm not gonna mock you for that. I'm not gonna, trash you for that. You had faith in the guy and he betrayed you. But enough is enough. If you love this country and you're genuinely America first, you can't keep defending this garbage. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, I wanna talk a little more about, what should we talk about? Well, we should talk about how Pete Hegseth really wants us to stop discussing how US soldiers are losing their lives for Israel. And we're not gonna do that. We're gonna continue talking about it, including in the next story we cover. We'll be right back. Read Hannah Hartman's comment first because I couldn't agree more with what you're saying here. And it's part of the reason why I've been so loyal to TYT and Cenk in particular. And Cenk and I are different stylistically, I think, even though people will see us on Piers Morgan and think we're the same. But at the end of the day, the man is ethical, moral, and is guided by his principles. And that's so hard to find in media. So here's what Hannah says. I've been watching TYT for 10 years, and if anything has been made clear, it's that Cenk has a strong moral code and people want to smear him, make wild accusations about things he said that intentionally twist to make him sound bad. I know he's not perfect and has said things in the past that he regrets, but I always know his intentions are good and I rarely believe crazy things I hear about him because I've seen his authenticity for 10 years. Hannah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you give him the benefit of the doubt because you actually watched the show. I came across a video yesterday where like someone I've never met in my life was like, oh yeah, Anna's getting people fired from the Young Turks so she can buy a Cadillac. And it's like, I've been driving a 2017 Honda Civic like for a while now, for almost 10 years. Like, what are we talking about? But people lie. I don't know why they do it. They just do it. And it is what it is. Like the bigger you get, the more name recognition you have in this space. People want to tear you down, unfortunately. And you just have to deal with it. It comes with the job. Tagrim Unlimited. I read your comment already. Sorry about that, Tagrim. Let's go to Sid Life 365. Welcome back, Anna. We missed you last night. Thank you. It's good to be back. The Raging Atheist says, no one captures my rage quite like Anna. I love having her in our corner. Thank you. Not everyone loves the rage, but I try to keep it under control. I don't do well with that though. All right, so let's go to our super chats. Night of Mirage Odyssey says, Al Jazeera reports that the strike on the Iranian girls' school, which killed 165 children, was likely intentional. Yeah, I'm not surprised. The investigation notes the school was an isolated building, meaning there were no nearby military targets to justify a mistake. Well, one of the things that I saw was the military's path of bombings. Like they planned ahead, and it was very clear that the school was within that path. So I don't think it was an accident at all. Using high precision Sparrow missiles capable of hitting even dining table within 3 meters from 1,000 kilometers away, the report concludes the school was deliberate. The strike on the school was deliberate. These people are monsters, man. Michael Cotavelli writes in and says, Ryan Grimm made a great point today. If Iran falls into civil war, what will happen to the uranium and which faction will control it? Great point by Ryan Grimm, one of the best journalists out there. Welcome back to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. And there's one thing that our Secretary of War desperately wants us to stop talking about. Here's what it is.
This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality. The terms of this war will be set by us at every step.
On the contrary, I would actually love to live in a country where we have a great president and I can help make the president look good. But we unfortunately don't live in that kind of country. We live in a country that is ruled by a leader that has his balls firmly grasped by a foreign leader. And so as a result, the US has been dragged into a war against Iran that has quickly escalated into a regional war. Things have already gotten out of control. The US is low on missile interceptors, which is pretty disastrous considering the fact that the interceptors are far more expensive and difficult to make compared to the cheaper drones and missiles that Iran seems to have in abundance. So that's what we're dealing with right now. But of course, Pete Hegseth would like us to stop talking about this. He would like us to stop drawing attention to the fact that we've already lost at a minimum 6 members of our military, men and women in our armed services. And this is in Israel. Israel likes to hide the damage that they have sustained as a result of the war that they've been egging on. Tel Aviv has been battered. I don't know how high the death toll is in Israel because they prevent journalists on the ground from reporting the specific details of how much damage the Iranians have managed to do in Tel Aviv. But we're in the United States of America, and our soldiers deserve to have their names read, to have their memories brought up, considering the fact that they sacrificed in their minds for our country. In the end, they ended up losing their lives on behalf of a foreign country. So to be fair, there are 2 things Hegseth could be referring to in the statement that we showed you earlier. So he could be talking about the deaths of Americans. He could also be referring to that strike on a elementary school that killed 160 children, elementary age children. Both look bad for Trump. There's no question about that. And CNN's Caitlin Collins decided to press the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, about this. And things got heated, to say the least. Take a look.
Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. You and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make the president look bad.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree.
Oh, the coverage is negative. The coverage is definitely negative. He's a bumbling idiot and dragged our military into a potentially devastating war that could require ground troops pretty soon. And he did it on behalf of a foreign country. Yeah, he's getting a lot of bad press right now for good reason. You want to know one of the other good reasons he's getting bad press? Because he reneged on his promises, namely this promise.
I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. No more wars, no more disruptions. We will have prosperity and we will have peace. Under Trump, we will have no more wars, no more disruptions, and we will have prosperity and peace for all. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace.
Just a side point, Ukraine's in a lot of trouble because we're not even able to provide interceptors for Persian Gulf allies of ours, because we're low on interceptors and we're using everything we have to protect Israel. So I don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine. And the opportunities to agree to a peace deal where Ukraine, yes, would have to give up some of their land, but at least they wouldn't have more of their land taken by Russia. They should have taken those deals, to be honest with you, because now Ukraine is an afterthought for the Trump administration entirely. Anyway, moving on. According to new polling from CNN and SSRS, many Americans do believe that Trump is an idiot. Okay, that's not what the poll asked, to be fair. Americans don't believe that Trump tried hard enough to avoid war. And I think that that's an accurate frame of mind. So 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of the direction or the decision to take military action against Iran. So this is just the latest poll. There have been similar polls that we've shared with you. Most say that they lack trust in Trump to make the right decisions about US use of force in Iran, with 60% saying they do not think he has a clear plan for handling the situation, and 62% saying he should get congressional approval for any further military action. The poll is just absolutely horrible for the Trump administration and for the Republicans as we get closer to the midterm elections. So for instance, just over a quarter, 27% feel that the US made enough of an effort at diplomacy with Iran before using military force, with 39% saying the US did not try hard enough at diplomacy first, and 33% say that they're unsure. By the way, these polls, as it pertains to foreign policy issues, tend to have a high percentage of Americans responding don't know or unsure. And that really is an indictment of our media, because foreign policy is something that, generally speaking, the media stays away from. And as a result, when these conflicts happen, unless you're, a bit of a news junkie or really care about foreign policy, you're not necessarily going to know exactly what's going on. And I think that's by design. Now, I do want to talk about the US service members who have been killed because 4 out of 6 have been identified so far. By the way, this is just my speculation. I hope I am wrong about this, but I do have a gut feeling that considering all of the damage the US has sustained at our embassies, at like that CIA center in Saudi Arabia, I think that the casualties on the American side likely are higher than we know, but we're gonna have to wait for confirmation on that. For now, though, I wanna show you the 4 service members who have been identified, who did lose their lives through strikes while they were in Kuwait. So clockwise from the top left, you have Declan J. Cody, age 20, 20-year-old kid. 20-year-old kid, guys, not even old enough to drink an alcoholic beverage, lost his life in Kuwait as he was in a triple wide trailer that Pete Hegseth lied and said was fortified. Nicole Amor, 39 years old. Noah Tietjens, 42 years old, and Cody Cork, 35 years old. What's even more devastating about the fact that these individuals lost their lives was that a few of them were actually about done with their military service. So Hegseth claimed that they were, again, in a fortified building. That wasn't true. The only thing that the building had to protect it was like a concrete wall that was erected specifically to prevent damage from possible suicide bombers, as if we're like in 2003 right now, but okay. So Tietjens and Amor were potentially going to basically retire from their military careers. This was supposed to be their last deployment. So Amor's 18-year-old son was getting ready to graduate, and she didn't want to miss any more of her 9-year-old daughter's childhood. And Tietjen was 3 months away from finishing his deployment in Kuwait. His brother told the New York Times he just wanted to get there and get it over with and get back. So with that in mind, I want to turn to Mark Levin, who has egged on this disastrous war and callously discusses the loss of American lives in this next video.
Unfortunately, every casualty is very sad, and it affects a family. And we don't like the fact that we lose any red-blooded Americans. But the battle against the Iranian regime, the purpose is to protect the American people, protect our armed forces, protect the homeland, help our allies, protect tens of thousands of people from being slaughtered, who've been slaughtered. And yes, retribution, to make it clear that you don't get to do this to us for half a century without any effective response. So of course, if we lose heroes, and we lost 3, and there may be born, the president says likely so, because it's a massive military operation. It's a terrible thing. They gave their lives. They gave their lives for a great cause. The cause is to try and ensure that it doesn't happen again, but on a massive, broader scale. We're talking about nuclear weapons.
I know that probably didn't sound callous, but to me, it's callous because he's lying, repeating the same BS. The only group of people who have killed tens of thousands of individuals in the Middle East are the Israelis. Iran did not kill tens of thousands of Americans. The only country in the Middle East lately that has killed Americans are the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. 10 Americans have been killed in the West Bank since October of 2023. And then you have the 6 American soldiers who got killed in Kuwait as this stupid war against Iran kicked off. And at least Mark Levin understands that here in America, you can't be as brazen about how little you care about the lives of our soldiers as you can be in Israeli media. Israeli media, they're much more honest. And I want to turn to Niv Raskin over at, I believe it was Channel 12 News in Israel. Here's what he had to say about American troops as they came under friendly fire in Kuwait. Now, this had to do with American troops whose jets were shot down. Luckily, they were all ejected from the planes and they're okay. They didn't die. But nonetheless, the wording here that you're about to hear from Raskin is important. Take a listen.
נחזור ונדגיש, מדובר באירוע בכווית אמריקאי, לא חלילה כמובן אירוע ישראלי.
They were American forces and not, God forbid, Israeli forces that came under friendly fire. We need to get them all out of office. I mean, I can't think of more than maybe 2 incumbent lawmakers that I would keep, but we need a reset when it comes to our government. We need to get all of these ghouls out immediately. Luckily, there have been some elections recently that show you just how unpopular it is to be a candidate who supports Israel. So we'll talk about that a little later. For now, let's take a break. That does it for the first hour. When we come back for hour 2, lots to get to, including repeating the same mistakes when it comes to arming certain groups. We'll be right back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd, but it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no, he's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Nina Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like, how is that like at one level, it's like, this is what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it
it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian.
Awesome.
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I have so many super chats to read, so I'm going to go ahead and catch up on some of them right now, and then we'll move on to our next story. Mohit writes in and says, do you make decisions on what person you'll debate or have a conversation with on her take? I like good faith discussion and debate with Lindy Lee, Amy Dangerfield, etc., but not with Dinesh D'Souza or Bianca or Ann Coulter. So Dinesh D'Souza and Bianca is her name. They were on the show today. And I quit like midstream. I just couldn't take it anymore. I can have a debate with people who are engaging in good faith, but people who are being dishonest on purpose, who are lying, you can't have a debate with them, right? So if I know that a person has these genuine beliefs or they can back up what they're saying with some evidence, okay, great. Then we can actually have a real exchange there. I don't, by the way, I have no control over the booking for that show. And I'm just done. I'm done. And I want to just say that Lindy Lee, by the way, that's not the job that I got fired from. Lindy Lee is someone that I'm sure many of you loathe because of the fact that she went from being a Democrat or Democratic fundraiser to then, completely switching over to the other side. But I give her credit for her growth because she did grow on the issue of Israel. She is willing to engage in good faith debate. I disagree with her vehemently on immigration issues, but at least she's someone I can have like a good faith debate with. Some of the people who got booked on that show, not so much. CDN Norse Dog Dad says, Anna, what side gig did you get fired from so we know to boycott it? I actually really love that place, and I love the people who work at that place, including the editor I was working with. I don't want to cause them any harm. They were forced to do it by the funders. Let's just keep it real. And so the people with the money are the ones with the power, and it is what it is. So I'm not gonna, trash them. Maybe one day I will, but right now I don't think it's the right thing to do. Dav Mill says, studying World War II on a granular level, two things that allowed the US win a short period in both Europe and Asian theaters: robust consumer markets from small arms to electronics and industrial capacity, one of which the US is losing, one of which the US lost. So yeah, you make a good point there. William Gabes World says, Cenk, you are the man. I mean, he's not here, but I'll read your comment anyway. Cenk, you are the man. Pierce is a grifter who never stands firm. We saw it also with Gaza. He always goes back and forth. Pierce, 175 girls were killed in Iran, but we need to wait to pass judgment. What? He does flip-flop a lot, but his show is probably one of the only platforms that allows people with controversial views to come on. Like the fact that I keep getting invited back, despite how harsh my criticism is of Israel, I think speaks highly of Pierce. But I do agree he does tend to kind of flip flop and play both sides. Sid Life says, Anna, thank you for your integrity. In every rejection, there's a hidden protection. God is aware of everything you've sacrificed for what is right. This isn't the end. It's a new foundation. We stand with you. Thank you. I love you guys so much. I'm so grateful to have you guys in our audience, and your support means way more to me than anything else. Okay, Let's get to one more story before we take a break, because I did want to talk a little bit about, well, something that's being debated right now on social media, and that has to do with whether or not we've armed Kurds to spark civil war in Iran.
The CIA has been working to arm Iranian Kurdish opposition forces with the goal of fomenting civil unrest in Iran. And they spoke to a number of different officials who characterized it in different ways. Some talked about sort of basically trying to pin down Iranian forces to create buffer zones where ordinary Iranians who are unarmed would have more freedom to go out on the streets and protest. Certainly, our source that we spoke to said that the focus is very much on establishing control of a sort of semi-autonomous Kurdish run area of Iran.
Well, the Israelis are getting closer to their dream of destabilizing and balkanizing Iran with the help of our CIA, of course. Now, it sounds a lot like what we did in Syria and Afghanistan, and it didn't work out so well, but maybe that's the point. So this will make the path to accomplishing the Greater Israel Project a little easier for the Israelis, but what does it mean for the whole of the Middle East? So US officials told the Wall Street Journal that the Trump administration, and Trump in particular, seems pretty open to the idea of backing Iranian groups willing to arm themselves in an effort to overthrow the regime in Iran, the IRCG. Now, the Kurds have thousands of soldiers along the Iran-Iraq border, and they control strategic areas that could be significant for the United States and Israel as this war escalates and continues to develop. On top of that, Axios, Barak Ravid, who's an insider when it comes to Israel, reports that the Trump administration has even had communications with Kurdish leaders. Trump has had phone calls with a Kurdish leader in particular. So he spoke to leaders actually from two main Kurdish factions in Iraq, Masoud Barzani and Bafel Talabani, a day after the Saturday bombing campaign in Iran began. So the calls were apparently a culmination, and get a load of this is important, were the culmination of months of behind the scenes lobbying by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, another source said. Israel has had close security, military, and intelligence ties with Kurds in Syria, Iraq, and Iran for decades. In other words, they get a group of stateless people to do their dirty work for them. And that's what the Kurds do. And they get betrayed every single time. I'm gonna give you examples of that in just a moment. But before I do, just a few more details. Netanyahu was the first to bring this idea of arming the Kurds and sending them into Iran to spark a civil war. He's the first one who brought this up to Trump. And he's been lobbying pretty hard to use the Kurds to sow unrest in Iran. And so US officials claim that Trump has not made up his mind yet. If you were on social media today, you might have seen some posts claiming that armed Kurds had already started their offensive. But those statements, including one of the statements that was made by Barak Ravid, were walked back. Ravid deleted a tweet where he claimed that the Kurds were already in action. However, one person says that it is the general view, and certainly Netanyahu's view, that the Kurds are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to rise up, one official said. So look, in previous conflicts, let's say in Syria, where we armed terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and the Kurds, by the way, or in Afghanistan, we did something very similar to what they're planning to do here with balkanizing Iran. You know, we arm the Kurds. A lot of them get killed. They never get anything out of it, really, right? And it's all of this is hidden from the American people. These like little CIA ops arming these various factions and various groups. It's all done undercover. But with the Trump administration, it's kind of amazing. Like they're just very candid about what they're thinking about doing, how they're planning to intentionally spark a civil war to destabilize a sovereign country on behalf of another foreign country, on behalf of Israel. So it's really incredible stuff here. So there's more. 6 days before the war began, 5 Kurdish groups in Iraq specifically forces to make up what they called the Coalition of Political Forces of Iranian Kurdistan. And the whole point was to wage a war against Iran. So why the Kurds? Well, the Kurds have significant forces along the border between Iraq and Iran, and Israeli bombing of sites in Western Iran has fueled speculation that it is seeking to clear the path for a Kurdish advance. That was reported by Haaretz, by the way, Israeli paper. So I definitely believe that the Israelis and the armed Kurds are working hand in glove. Do I believe that Trump is still, he's undecided, he doesn't know what he's gonna do? I have no idea. Trump seems undecided about everything. He seems like he's just stumbling and bumbling through what could be one of the most devastating wars the US has been dragged into. Now, the Kurds would have to be literally the dumbest people alive to trust Donald Trump of all people. Because remember, we armed the Kurds in Syria. We had the Kurds do our dirty work for us and fight ISIS in Syria. And then in October of 2019, Trump decided to abandon the Kurds in Syria, making way for the Turks to come in and massacre them. So what am I talking about? Well, Trump greenlit a Turkish invasion that did make that massacre possible. And if you don't believe me, or if you don't remember, here's how Trump defended his decision to do so.
The president saying today the Kurds are, quote, no angels, saying their fight has nothing to do with us. And now we see the letter President Trump wrote to the president of Turkey saying history will look upon you as the devil if good things don't happen.
We've been talking to Turkey for 3 years. They've been wanting to do this for many years, as you know. They've been fighting each other for centuries. They've been fighting each other for hundreds of years. This has been going on. We were put into this battle. Kurds are fighting for their land, just so you understand. They didn't help us in the Second World War. They didn't help us with Normandy, as an example.
They didn't help us with Normandy. Okay. So will the Kurds get involved? Honestly, at this point, we don't know. Like I said earlier, there were already some erroneous reports claiming that the Kurds were already armed and fighting in action. They were already in Iran causing chaos, but those claims were then walked back. The fact that this was thought up by Netanyahu makes me believe that it's gonna happen, whether we like it or not, whether Trump likes it or not. Remember, Trump is Netanyahu's bitch. So he will do what he is told. And if Netanyahu wants the Kurds to go in, the Kurds will go in. Trump's just gonna have to deal with it. You know, what are you, like the leader of a country of 330 million people? How dare you? How about you shut up and do as you're told, Trump? And he will. He'll listen to his daddy, like the little bitch that he is. And so, nonetheless, there's evidence that the National Army of Kurdistan, the military wing of the Kurdish nationalist militant group known as the Kurdistan Freedom Party, or PAK, was part of the armed riots that led to complete chaos and death in Iran not too long ago during those protests. Remember when that happened? This is also a little bit tricky because the Kurds are not fans of the Shah or the Shah's son, Pahlavi, who the Israelis would like to install as their puppet, as the leader of Iran. So that could get a little messy, And they do have a hostile relationship with Turkey, the United States and NATO, but they never hesitate to be used as cannon fodder for America and Israel's dirty wars. So the Kurdish leader in Iran, Mustafa Jidri, who apparently is the leader of KDPI, that's one of the Kurdish militia groups, issued a statement on X earlier today. And here is what he claims. The US and Israeli strikes on the security and military bases of the Islamic Republic of Iran's regime often pose a grave threat to the lives of civilians and ordinary people. I urge all soldiers and personnel who possess choice and a desire for freedom across Iran, and especially in Kurdistan, to abandon the barracks and security and military bases of the regime's IRGC army and return to their family homes. This would be in their own best interest, both during these strikes and afterward. It would spare them from the fate of the security forces and the regime's crackdowns. So it looks like there might be some disagreement or dissent within, these various Kurdish groups, these Kurdish militias. So who knows what is at play and what is to come. But what we do know, without a shadow of the doubt, is that Netanyahu wants to arm the Kurds and have them sow chaos in Iran, civil war in Iran, and our CIA is trying to make it happen. Whether or not it happens remains to be seen, but we'll follow through with the story and update you as it develops. For now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a lot more to get to, including the devastation that Israel has carried out in Lebanon. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. All right, we've got a lot more comments to get to. Bach says, I'm not concerned about boots on the ground. War is war and we are in it. Let's just get it over with already. I don't know if you'd feel the same way if you had a family member in the military that could be deployed to fight a senseless war on behalf of a foreign country, but okay. I mean, if the point that you're trying to make is that our country is fully controlled by the Israelis and whether we like it or not, it's gonna happen. Okay, that's a point, and I probably agree with that. But if there's any way that we could prevent it, we should. I just don't know if we can. Zero writes in and says 00083 writes in and says, Trump and his MAGA-loons have completely and utterly destroyed our credibility in the world. And now we, the United States, are completely untrustworthy. No, I don't know how the country recovers from this. Not just in terms of our geopolitical relationships and all of that, but economically, debt-wise, we're already in bad shape, and this is just gonna destroy us. But okay, yeah. America 1776 USA says, it feels like too many leaders are focused on their own circles instead of people living with the consequences of their decisions. Love all the work TYT does for us. Thank you. They definitely don't care about us. Like we've definitely, and we've been in this age of leadership that looks out for themselves and enriches themselves. They don't give a damn about us. It's amazing how brazen they are about it too. So overt. Dav Mill says, endless wars was one of the things that brought down the Greeks, Roman, Ottoman, and British empires. But the US will be different as we ignore history. Yeah, I mean, if you love this country, I don't know how you're not beside yourself right now. Because yeah, history repeats itself. You know how empires fall. This is gonna destroy us. And again, we were already in bad shape going into it. Josh writes in and says, Anna, thank you for always calling out people in the debates you do on Piers Morgan and her take. I hate when those people lie constantly. You're the definition of America first, so thank you for being fearless. Thank you. Yeah, and there's a lot of punishment that comes along with that, but I'll take the punishment if I can speak my mind. Gargoyle Dragon says, he's not the candidate or president of peace. He is a big McDeath with a side of racism and a large drink of inflation. Speaking of inflation, there's an economic story we'll get to later, and I'm worried. about the war against Iran escalating or spreading into a regional war, what I'm mostly referring to, of course, is the fact that you now have Iran bombing US bases and embassies and oil infrastructure in various, Persian Gulf countries. You also have the issue of Israel escalating its war against Lebanon, not just Hezbollah, but Lebanon. And this next story will tell you exactly what I mean when I say Israel's war against Lebanon. Take a look.
The latest conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is escalating. There is no front line, and there is no mediation or diplomatic effort to end it. We are in Hazmiye. This is a suburb of Beirut. It's not considered a Hezbollah stronghold. It is not where Hezbollah supporters live. Behind me, the Comfort Hotel, which was targeted by an Israeli strike in the early hours of the morning.
So before I continue with this story about what Israel is doing to Lebanon, including areas of Lebanon where Hezbollah does not operate and has no control over, I just want to talk a little bit about the value or what I think of when it comes to Beirut, when it comes to countries like Lebanon, like Iran. When you talk about the Armenian diaspora, and I'm talking about people who fled Armenia due to the genocide that was carried out in 1915, they fled to places like Syria. That's where my dad's side of the family ended up. And despite everything you hear about Muslims and Arabs through the propaganda here in US media, these were countries that took Armenians in and gave them a home, a place to be safe. My dad's side of the family ended up in Damascus. My mom's side of the family ended up in Haifa, Palestine. Many Armenians ended up in Beirut. That's why you'll hear about Lebanese Armenians. These are the Armenians who settled in Beirut after the genocide. There are Iranian Armenians, Persian Armenians. These are Armenians who went to Iran for safety after the genocide. And these are places that I never had an opportunity to visit, and to know that some of their historical sites are being targeted, that these places are just being completely destroyed by a belligerent pariah state like Israel, it's personal. It really is, because these civilians don't deserve what they're dealing with. But there's no one here to protect them. In fact, in Lebanon, really the only group that seeks to protect Lebanon is Hezbollah. Regardless of what you think about them as a terrorist group or whatever you've heard in the media, without Hezbollah, Israel would have annexed huge portions, huge swaths of land from Lebanon. That's the reality of the situation. So with that in mind, Israel is continuing to escalate its attacks against Lebanon, across Lebanon, in fact. IDF strikes hit a hotel in Beirut, and a residential complex in the eastern part of the country, killing at least 11 people, and that's according to Lebanese state media. And now war-obsessed lawmakers here in the States are also egging Trump to help Israel in its military campaign against the Lebanese. So before we get to Lindsey Graham, the piece of crap that he is, clamoring for even more death and destruction, we do have to update you guys on what's been going on with Lebanon. Because if you can remember, Hezbollah had signed a ceasefire with Israel in 2024. Since then, Israel has violated that ceasefire by carrying out literally thousands of strikes against Lebanon. On Monday, Hezbollah, a Lebanese militant group that's backed by Iran, began firing rockets in northern Israel in retaliation for the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei. And none of those rockets luckily resulted in casualties. As much as I absolutely hate the government and military of Israel, I don't want to see civilians die, period. I don't care if they're Israeli civilians. I don't care if they're Lebanese civilians. Civilians should be protected. But unfortunately, we now live in a world where international law has been totally dismantled, and anything goes. There are no rules. And so a lot of civilians are dying. So none of the rockets, like I said, resulted in casualties on the Israeli side. So 11 people did die in the strikes on Lebanon, but the rockets didn't kill anyone in Israel, luckily. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned Hezbollah's actions as irresponsible and said his government was immediately banning the group's military activities. Okay, good luck with that. Total cucks. So embarrassing. But since then, Israel has carried out waves of airstrikes across Lebanon, in addition to targeting the southern suburbs of Beirut, where Hezbollah does have broad support. Israel has also hit outside of Hezbollah-controlled areas. Why would they do that? I thought this was a war against Hezbollah. So Lebanon's health ministry said Israeli strikes on 2 towns south of Beirut killed 6 people and wounded 8. Then Israel struck a residential building in the eastern city of Baalbek, killing 4 and wounding 6 others. The city's mayor says that only civilians live there, which makes it a perfect target for the Israelis, of course. I mean, what would the Israelis be if they weren't slaughtering civilians? They also hit the Comfort Hotel in a mostly Christian suburb of Beirut called Hazmieh, okay? Hazmieh, sorry about that, with no prior warning. A hotel, guys, a hotel. And that hotel, by the way, is less than a mile away from the presidential palace. So why did Israel strike it? But it's still not clear exactly why it was targeted, other than the fact that we're talking about Israelis. They do terrorism, and that's what this was. There are some reports that there was an Iranian diplomat at the hotel, but those reports are unconfirmed, and I'm sure they're coming from Israel, and I don't trust the Israelis. They lie. That's what they do. It's their specialty. According to the owner of the hotel was sheltering about 13 families that had been displaced by Israel's war on Lebanon. And the only casualty from the strike was their young receptionist. The owner, like many in Lebanon, is fed up with both sides of the war. He says, quote, "They're worse than each other." She muttered, referring to Israel and Hezbollah, 2 sides of the same coin. I don't think Hezbollah exists without Israeli aggression, to be honest with you. Hezbollah exists specifically because of the fact that Israel keeps attempting to encroach on Lebanese land. They keep trying to annex Lebanese land. So in total, since fighting between Hezbollah and Israel resumed on Monday, Lebanon's health ministry says the death toll from Israeli strikes on the country has risen to 72, with at least 437 people wounded. And the death toll did include at least 7 children. Additionally, the UN Refugee Agency said Tuesday that 30,000 displaced people were staying in collective shelters in Lebanon, while many others slept in their car, on sides of the roads, as they could not yet find safe shelter. And honestly, if you're a country targeted by Israel, is there any safe shelter? Israel's the type of country that will tell people to evacuate to a certain area for safety, and then they'll proceed to bomb the area they told people to evacuate to. That's what they did early on their war against Palestinians in Gaza, which later turned into a genocide, of course. That's what they do. There is no safe harbor when you're targeted by Israel. And when I say targeted by Israel, I'm not just talking about Hezbollah, I'm talking about civilians in these countries. They don't care about civilian lives. We're talking about a country that was founded by 3 separate terrorist groups. You think they're gonna care about international law when they're in their quest to acquire more land and control? Come on. Meanwhile, Israel has sent ground troops into the south. Brigadier General Efi Defrin, an Israeli military spokesperson, said on Tuesday that Israeli forces moved forward and took over strategic areas in Lebanon, expanding the Israeli military's zone of control close to Israel's northern border. And Israel really has no plans on stopping their campaign, because this isn't about protecting Israel. This is about taking over the Middle East. Yesterday, they warned residents of more than 80 villages to evacuate immediately. We are at war with the wrong country. If we were at war with the right country, I would seriously consider enlisting. And while Israel is publicly saying that their campaign against Lebanon is simply to protect its citizens along the northern border, military officials admit that their true plan is to go even deeper into Lebanon with the hopes of disarming Hezbollah. Or let me decode that for you. They want the land. Okay, they want the land, they're going for it. That's why they're going deeper into Lebanon. That's why they are bombing areas of Lebanon where Hezbollah doesn't even exist. According to the New York Times, the Israeli plan is to increase pressure on Hezbollah in stages. 2 Israeli officials said, saying that a small buildup of forces in Lebanon could evolve into a bigger and more ambitious invasion. Those plans were shared with some battalion commanders and other mid-level officers weeks ago before the war with Iran, the official said. So the officers could prepare their troops. Literally, the only just war I could think of would be a war against the Israelis. The Israeli military's chief of staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, confirmed that the campaign in Lebanon would not stop until Hezbollah was decimated. By the way, everything that Israel does, essentially, like it just reproduces more extremism. And I think that that's on purpose, to be honest with you. They know it, they totally know it. So the idea that they're doing this to disarm a militant group is laughable to me because they kill all sorts of innocent people. And when they do that, that radicalizes people. That creates more extremism in the Middle East. And by the way, more hostility toward Americans in the region and more hostility toward our country. When we as Americans did not want this war, did not want to get dragged into this, but are dragged into it anyway because our government is not accountable to us, doesn't care about us. Whether we're talking about a Democratic administration or Republican administration, the president will open his mouth and take it like a good boy. So the Israeli military's chief of staff, said what he said about disarming Hezbollah. But today, a senior Israeli official acknowledged that Israel misjudged Hezbollah's willingness to engage in a fight. So this was reported by The Cradle, Israeli Channel 13, citing a security source, quote, "We miscalculated the level of force with which Hezbollah joined the battle. And we were wrong regarding Hezbollah and did not expect them to launch missiles with this range." Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Hopefully Hezbollah's firepower is even worse than the Israelis are thinking at this moment. And yeah, I mean it. They should get the F out of Lebanon right now, right now. And honestly, the leaders of all of these Arab countries and Muslim majority countries, do you guys not understand that you're facing an existential threat right now? Do you not see that? You like having your countries destabilized? You like having Mossad come in and spur these ridiculous, nonsensical wars, civil wars within your countries? You like having your land annexed? Like, what is going on here? I would say it would make more sense to maybe build a coalition of Arab states and Muslim majority countries to fight off Israel's aggression. That would be better for them. But for whatever reason, they're just not going in that direction. It's really interesting. And honestly, what this ongoing escalation in the Middle East has made abundantly clear about America and Americans on the international stage is that we're a bit of a paper tiger. I mean, we're running low on interceptors. We're unable to protect our own embassies in the Middle East. We're unable to protect our own military installations in the Middle East. Not a good look, pretty embarrassing for the Americans, isn't it? So for my fellow Americans, how much more of this public humiliation are we gonna take? I loathe Israel, I do. I think that it is a dangerous, vicious, belligerent pariah state. And it is shameful that we continue to enable them. And now, after being one of the leading voices pushing Trump into war with Iran, Senator Lindsey Graham is now begging the president to engage with war against Hezbollah. Take a look.
So I'm calling on President Trump today. Join Israel to attack Hezbollah. Avenge the Marines. America never forgets. Those 220 Marines and 18 sailors' families We want to go after the infrastructure that killed your loved ones. There are IRGC assets in Beirut as I speak. President Trump come up with a new operation called Simplify. Fly with Israel and go after Hezbollah, who has American blood on its hands. Not only take the mothership of Iran down, also take the proxy of Hezbollah, settle the score, even the account.
I have an idea. Why don't we just like airdrop Lindsey Graham in the middle of Iran right now? Or Lebanon. Why doesn't he fight Hezbollah himself? I'd love to see it. So he's referring to Hezbollah's 1983 attack on the US Marine barracks in Beirut, which got 241 Americans killed. By the way, there is some indication that the Israelis knew that it was coming and didn't inform the Americans about it. Par for the course. I think that they had foreknowledge when it came to 9/11 too. But anyway, even Republican Tim Burchett roasted Graham for his bloodthirstiness. Let's take a look at that.
Senator Lindsey Graham is now calling for the U.S. to start bombing Lebanon in response to the Hezbollah IDF action.
Lindsey hadn't seen a fist fight. He hasn't wanted to turn into a bombing, right? So I just take it with a grain of salt, dude.
Because Lindsey Graham is a coward and he thinks this makes him look like a tough guy. And of course, this is what his donors want him to do, so he does it. But he doesn't have kids. He doesn't have to worry about his son getting drafted into a disastrous war that could get him killed. By the way, this is escalating very quickly. And if China and Russia gets involved, I don't know how bad this is gonna get. But I'm starting to think that there is a possibility that we could find ourselves in a situation where there is a draft. So, I mean, look, and it's not just what's happening in the Middle East. Like Trump is pursuing regime change in Cuba. Okay, there was a story that we didn't even have time to cover on the show today. We're getting involved in Ecuador. What are we doing? We don't have endless resources and we don't have endless American soldiers to sacrifice for these nonsense wars. This is a total disaster. And like, Trump seems to have lost his mind too. Like I'm seeing the cognitive decline. I think most people can see it. Aside from the weird rashes he's got, I don't know what that's all about. I'm not gonna diagnose him, I'm not a health expert. But in terms of the way he's been behaving, he's definitely lost it, even more than usual. So we're being led by an elderly man in cognitive decline who is totally controlled by a foreign country. This is a disaster. And if people aren't enraged by it, or at least concerned by it, I don't know what world you're living in. I don't know what you're smoking, but honestly, I could use a little because I'm worried. And I feel like everyone else should be too. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll end on some positive news. We'll talk about the Senate primary race in Texas. Hey guys, all right, so our member comments, I'm gonna read a lot of them during our members only bonus episode today. It will be behind a paywall, so members obviously will have access to it. But if you're not a member and you wanna watch it, just go to tyt.com/join or hit that join button if you're watching us on YouTube. But for now, I'm gonna read the super chats just because I don't know if our super chatters are members and I wanna do right by them and read their comments before we run out of time. So we've got Zero writing in again. The idea that we're going to put troops on the ground in Iran is absolutely nuts. In my view, this would be the Bay of Pigs on steroids. It would be absolutely insane, but that probably means Trump's gonna do it. CDN Norse Dog Dad says, bombs today are not like World War II. Then the bombs were dropped and you hoped they hit targets and not civilians. But 86 years later, we are still digging up bombs that didn't go off. Jono writes in and says, hey, Anna, I'm surprised that the article talking about putting Americans in camps wasn't high on the list. Actually, that was a story I wanted to cover earlier this week when it first broke. But as you can imagine, the news cycle has been insane. But yeah, there's a guy, I forget the name of this individual. He lives in America, by the way, and he's calling for people like Cenk, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, basically individuals who have been very critical of Israel, Jackson Hinkle, to be rounded up and placed in internment camps. Okay, people like that should be locked away. Okay, because they're un-American, they don't believe in our way of life, and they literally want to punish Americans for their freedom of expression, if that freedom of expression entails criticizing the country that he's actually loyal to, and that's Israel, of course. Is that a trope? Oh, is that a trope? F out of here. Callie Millie says, it's clear, Anna, you've been vindicated against the critics while others preferred your congeniality. I salute that you turned it into an art of war strategy, using the camera-ready charm as a bridge to deliver inconvenient truth the world needed to hear. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm doing my best. And yeah, you know what? Like the whole oh, I'm clutching my pearls. Oh, Anna, she raises her voice. Damn right I do. What do you want me to do? You want me to play patty cakes with everything that's going on right now? You want me to have like a civil, calm conversation as these disgusting, deceptive people lie in your faces about what's actually going on? No, I'm actually passionate about this. I'm not in it for money. I'm not in it because it's a glamorous job. If anything, it has led to a lot of heartache and a lot of pain in my personal life. But I care about this stuff. I care about the country. I live here. My family lives here. I think about my nieces and my nephews and their future. And the fact that we are destroying our own country on behalf of a foreign country is infuriating, to say the least, and that we're being lied into it too. All right, Rio Hand says, does anyone, all right, we got to get back to the show. I'll read more of your comments in a bit. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I'm gonna read some super chats and we're probably gonna run out of time, but I gotta read these super chats. Thank you to all of the generous viewers of the show. I'll be reading some member comments in the bonus episode for our members, tyt.com/join for that. We will be covering the Democratic primary race for a Senate seat in Texas in our bonus episode. We're also going to talk a little bit about Gavin Newsom's 180 on Israel. Is it sincere or is this for, electoral purposes? Can't wait to talk about that. So if you're a member, you're definitely in for a treat. For now, though, I do want to just interact with the audience a little bit. We've got about 8 minutes, so send in your comments. I'll read as many of them as I can. Let's start with 5P did 5, who says, Anna, in Farsi, we call you Kos Nane. Nane is mint in Armenian, by the way. I don't know what Kos Nane means, but I know what Sharmuta means. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, let's go to Konstantin Kraviris, who says, $22.22 super chat to celebrate my daughter making a number 2 on the potty. That's freaking awesome. I know how difficult potty training is, so I'm excited for you. Congratulations. Uncle N8T3 says, if these warmongering Christians read the Talmud, they would distance themselves from Israel entirely. I say that as a Christian. Republicans really are clueless. Love you guys at TYT. Thank you, I appreciate it. Look, I know that there are some things in the Talmud that sound really, really bad. I am not a theologian, and so I don't want to take parts of the Talmud out and say see, this is what they believe. I know that it's a rabbinical thing. All I know is, please don't hate on Jewish people, okay? Jewish people in general are not responsible for what the government of Israel is doing. I know there are a lot of people out there who try to smear me as an anti-Semite. I am not an anti-Semite. I have no hatred in my heart for Jewish people or the Jewish religion. I do have hatred in my heart, though, for a foreign country that gets the men and women in our armed services killed, that drives us into deeper and deeper debt, that couldn't care less about our country or our well-being. But that's a government. And that country's military, by the way. In terms of Jewish Americans, I see them as my fellow Americans, period. So hating them simply for their religious beliefs or their ethnicity, I think is wrong. And I'm not saying that you are saying that, but I just want to make sure that we're careful, guys, because the worst thing that could happen is that we direct our ire at the wrong people. We have to be focused and we need to be precise in who we are, drawing our ire toward. All right, let's go to Dav Mill, who says the non-news propagandists are not to inform, they're to keep people on the edge of their seats, worried about fill in the blank are going to do as antidepressant and nerve anxiety drugs are advertised. You're not wrong. I mean, the shock therapy I think is very real. Disaster capitalism is very real. So, no, is it Naomi Klein's? No, that's not her name. Why am I forgetting her first name? Jeez. Okay, but you should read The Shock Doctrine. It's a really, really good book that kind of bolsters what you're talking about here. The reason the CIA and not Mossad, is looking to arm the Kurds is because this involves money and we are the money bag. Also, CIA, Mossad, I always say same, honestly. They do work hand in glove. Fox says arming folks in the Middle East always works out so well for us. So this is in response to the story about how the US is considering arming the Kurds to spark civil war in Iran. Meanwhile, I can't get full auto M4 or cheap NVGs, just handing it out though. I don't know what that is, Box, but I feel for you, I really do. Dav Mill also says in the 60s, when gold was $16.50 an ounce, a bar would buy a nice middle-class home. Now around 5,000 ounce a bar would still buy a nice middle-class home. Monetary policy in DC is the reason. Yeah, inflation's really bad. That's the other thing. If we have time, there's a story about the economy that I really want to cover because there are economic ramifications that will come about as a result of this ongoing war, escalating war in the Middle East. Already, there has been some negative impacts to oil and gas infrastructure when it comes to these Gulf countries. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit and just kind of make sure you guys know to brace for impact, to know what could come as this continues to escalate and expand. But I'll read a few more of your comments and then we'll wrap up the main show and head over to our bonus episode for our members. Let's go to Gargoyle Dragon, who says he's not the candidate or president of peace. I already read that. He's a big McDeath with a side of racism and a large drink of inflation. And we will be talking about that inflation at some point on the show, either today during the bonus episode or tomorrow during the main show. All right, let's go to the rest of our members. We've got Anita Carter, who says, thank you, TYT, for reporting facts. Thank you. And thank you for keeping us honest when we get anything wrong and you guys want to correct us. We've got Rusty Jones, who says, Hegseth sounded psychotic today. To be fair, he sounds psychotic often. I remember, one of the MAGA journalists, if you want to call her that, asked a question that didn't completely fall in line with the administration. And the way he addressed her, to me, clarified and reinforced the claims about him being abusive to his ex. It was wild to see it. Let's go to Dana Brecht, who says access of Epstein. Yeah. This was a big distraction from the Epstein files, wasn't it? I wonder if that was on purpose. I found Thone says, Anna is my favorite. Thank you, you're my favorite. Thank you for watching and thank you for the support. I'll read one more from America, 1776. Our military should exist first and foremost to protect our country and our people, not to be drawn into endless conflicts that don't have a clear connection to our safety. I totally agree. Members only bonus episode is next. tyt.com/join. I'll see you guys there.